Welcome to Perspective in Business. I am your host, Juan Carlos Giraldo from Boston, United States. Today I am thrilled to be speaking with Rajeev Peshawaria, a globally respected leadership thinker and CEO of the Stewardship Asia Center in Singapore. Rajeev is the author of the thought-provoking book Sustainable Sustainability: Why ESG is Not Enough. Rajiv, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy to have you today as a guest. How are you?
Very well, and thank you for having me.
No, I'm so happy to have you, Rajiv. Thank you. Rajiv, I would like to start this conversation by asking you, what inspired you to write Sustainable Sustainability: Why ESG is Not Enough? And how has your experience as CEO of the Stewardship Asia Center shaped your perspective on these issues?
The main motivation for writing the book was because I found that, the whole world was talking about ESG. You couldn't spend an hour without those letters appearing somewhere or the other. Uh, and yet we were going in the opposite direction. Uh, Global warming is getting worse. Inequality is getting worse. In every way you think about it, we were not making any progress despite ESG everywhere. So that was the main reason. I had a hypothesis that we were trying to solve a leadership issue with incentives, money, and regulation. So that was the reason that I wrote the book.
Thank you, Rajiv. It's a very powerful answer. Your book makes a bold argument that ESG frameworks, while well intentioned, of course, aren't sufficient. Can you walk us through the key limitations of current ESG approaches and what you propose as a more effective alternative?
The reason why ESG didn't work is because we were trying to use unnatural ways to change human behavior. I'll give you a few examples. So, for example, we were asking humans to consume less for greater good. Well, it is human tendency to consume, and that wasn't going to work because, tell me to consume less for greater good, it's against human nature. It doesn't work. Then we were asking businesses to sacrifice some profit for purpose. Again, businesses exist to make money. Asking them to sacrifice profit for purpose was unnatural. Uh, we said let's regulate. So every country started coming up with harder and harder regulations. What happened? People found loopholes. When you over regulate, it stifles business, so people find loopholes. uh, then we said let's incentivize people to do the right thing, and at one point of time there were $40 trillion in so-called ESG assets, ESG funds, but hardly any, if at all, went towards creating any positive impact to Mother Earth or to humanity. Then finally, this ESG was based on this huge idea of measure and report. So what happened? Greenwashing happened. The the sustainability reports kept getting thicker and glossier, but it was all window dressing. It was all sort of greenwashing. And finally, the last point about why it didn't work is we were using alarmism. We were scaring people to death. Oh, the world is going to come to an end if we don't do anything. Now, if you scare people that much, they shut their head under the sand. They don't do anything. So those are the reasons why ESG doesn't work.
Interesting. So instead of just layering on more metrics and disclosures, you are calling for something deeper. That's a very interesting point that leads me perfectly to something you introduce in your book. You explain ES action spectrum, which I found very interesting, and how it helps us to understand different levels or layers as well of environmental and social commitment. Can you elaborate a little bit about it? Because it's very, very interesting and crucial, I would say.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, my hypothesis was that we are trying to solve a leadership problem with regulation, incentives, and measurement reporting, et cetera, et cetera. So at Stewardship Asia Center, we've been doing a lot of research as to when a company actually makes a difference, or when a human being actually makes a difference towards climate change or social issues. What is that? So we were trying to learn what is the answer. If ESG is not the answer, then what is the answer? So as part of that research, we found that there were five type of corporate players when it came to environmental or social action. So on the extreme left-hand side were the greenwashers or the purpose washers. These people were not doing anything, willfully deceiving the public, trying to act good when they were not. Then next was people or companies who are in denial, What climate change? What social inequality? It's not, doesn't exist. And even if it does, it's not my problem. Number three were window dressers. These were companies that said, oh, everybody's talking about sustainability. Let's do something to look good, but more form, less substance. Number four were box checkers. Because there's so much regulation, let me do the minimum that will keep me out of legal trouble and no more. And finally, a small percentage of people we found were real, or companies were real steward leaders. These are people who see themselves as stewards of planet Earth and humanity, and they proactively find solutions for either climate or social issues. So that's the spectrum, those five types. And the difference between the left and the right is the left hand side, the greenwashers, etc., they are profiting from today's challenges. They have no incentive to change the status quo. The ones on the extreme right, the steward leaders, they find profitable solutions to today's challenges. Their whole business is about making money by solving climate change or making money by solving a social issue.
And how do you see the role of businesses evolving in the coming years if they want to achieve true sustainability, in your opinion? And what practical steps would you recommend that corporate leaders and organizations take right now?
To answer that question, I want to just take a little detour first. We have to understand the world we are living in today compared to even 10 or 15 years ago. Today, more than 6 billion people have internet connectivity. Okay. And then add to that powerful AI or artificial intelligence. And what is that doing? That is making the whole world totally transparent. Nothing is hidden now. Everything is in full public view. So, in one of my books, I call the current time the naked era because we are all naked. As a company, we are naked. As an individual, we are naked. What does that mean for how do you make money as a business? In the old days, you could, the idea was maximize profit, but don't break the law. As long as you're not breaking the law, make as much money as possible. And you could take advantage of information asymmetry, meaning for the longest time, the tobacco industry and the sugar industry was able to hide the negative impact of their product. Today, they cannot hide anything. That's the naked era. And number two, because everybody is naked, if the customer has a choice today of buying your product or my product and the price is the same, if your product is made with more responsibility, then they will buy your product. They can check the facts immediately. So, what does that mean for business to make money? Today, you have to find profitable solutions to solve the most pressing human problems. That's the way to make money. Otherwise, the public will cancel you because you are naked. And the whole economics of the naked era are different from the past. So, to coming back to ESG and sustainability, the way to make money going forward in the naked era is going to be to make sustainability profitable, meaning find profitable solutions. And then your business will do well, and you will do well, and you will last longer. It's a fact. Our research is showing that profitable sustainability will give you sustainable profitability. I know it's a play on words, but it's true.
And Rajiv, speaking of that, do you have a case study of an organization or an industry perhaps that is achieving good results by applying these strategies and also, of course, profiting that you would like to share with the audience?
I cannot speak to an industry as a whole because in every industry there are good players and bad players, but I'll give you a couple of company examples. So, for example, there is this, every year at Stewardship Asia Center, we have an award called SL25, which stands for Steward Leadership 25. Uh, and anybody who's solving profitably environmental or social issue can apply, and the 25 best, we give them an award. Now, so we meet many, many such companies. So I'll give you one example. There is a company in India, there was this doctor who was working in a private hospital making a lot of money, but he realized that when in rural India or in tier 3 cities, small cities in India, there are no super specialty hospitals. So if anybody's having a heart attack, they have to travel by road 4 to 6 hours to come to a big city and then get treated. Half of them die on the way. So what he did, he opened one super specialty hospital in a rural area, brought in the best doctors, the best machines, and everything. Uh, Today they have 30 such hospitals, and they are growing every week, every year. Now get this: 60% of the patients are treated without cashless. Okay, it is a fireable offense to refuse treatment to somebody who cannot afford it. All these hospitals are in tier 3 cities or in rural areas. You can get a heart surgery for one third the price of a hospital in a big city. Uh, and yet they are profitable. How are they profitable? If 60% of the patients are treated cashless, how are they profitable? And the answer is innovation. Every by the way, the patients are the poorest of the poor people. They cannot even read and write. The poorest people of India are covered by a government insurance policy, but even the villagers, the poor people, don't know about these policies, and then they don't know how to read or write, so they cannot fill the forms to get the money. So, what is the innovation? At every hospital, there is an administrative cell, and their job is to do the paperwork on behalf of these illiterate patients to get the money from the government. Now, the more they help the poor people, the more money they make because no other hospital is doing it. So this is the answer. So the practical step is, first of all, to ask yourself the question, which environmental or social problem must I solve profitably?
Yeah. The funny that you mentioned that because while I was preparing for this conversation, I saw one of your videos and you mentioned something very interesting. Companies have a chance and opportunity to innovate, and stewards, leaders can turn this in a great business models. Just the case, as you mentioned right now. That's really interesting. Rajiv, we are entering to the middle of 2026. So looking ahead, what impact do you hope sustainability, will have on corporate leaders by the end of the year or the years to come? But for example, of course, you mentioned ESL, right? Add the L to ESG, which means the leadership. But also, some people argument that we should add another G, because of geopolitics. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so in my book, I argue that ESG must upgrade itself to ESL, where L stands for steward leadership. And steward leadership is all about finding profitable solutions to human problems. And it turns out, and I've just written a sequel to this book, which comes out in the end of July. It's called Maximum Purpose, Maximum Profit. And in that book, we are arguing and we have shown through research that companies that run their company businesses with steward leadership principles actually live longer than 100 years. There is a direct correlation not only among with profitability, because in the naked era you better make money by doing the right thing for society, otherwise you will be cancer, but there is also a link to longevity. So companies like Faber-Castell in Germany are 270 years old. From day one, they have been doing this, what we are talking about. The Tata Group in India is 155 years old. The Ayala Group in Philippines is 200 years old. They've always practiced steward leadership. So it's not about, my hope is that people understand that this is not appealing to your goodness of your heart. This is practical business sense why you should do
Rajiv, in your
this.
opinion, we are living right now in a very volatile world. What is the future of ESG within organizations? Will it evolve, fade, or be replaced by something else? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the big mistake, as I mentioned, A, it was all unnatural. B, people looked at ESG as a cost, compliance, or risk exercise. So either they looked at it as from a cost, oh my God, how much is it going to cost me? Or they looked at it as what are the risks? And third was how should I comply? All of which adds to the cost. Now, you have a running business and you bolt on ESG from the side, it will always be cost, compliance, and risk, right? The future of ESG is in looking at the opportunity side. How can I make money by solving either environmental or social issues? And I sit on a Futures Council of the World Economic Forum, and the World Economic Forum research says that climate change alone provides $10.1 trillion a year of new business opportunities for the next 10 or 15 years, and it can create 395 million new jobs. So, why are we not looking at this as an opportunity for making money rather than as a cost, compliance, or risk exercise alone? That was the problem with ESG, and till today, people don't understand this. And that's the big shift that's going to happen. Steward leaders understand it. Steward leaders have always understood it. Some of the examples are in the book, but every year we get so many new stories, and which is why, in fact, in June we are releasing a 1 hour documentary film showcasing some of these examples of what is the new way of surviving and thriving in the naked era. What are the economics of the naked era? And the idea is, so in net, I'm an optimist. I feel, geopolitics and difficult times in terms of war and geopolitics and geoeconomics will come and go. Faber Castell has seen World War One, World War Two, regime changes, many things. But if your business principles are sound, you will overcome those issues.
Rajiv, before wrapping up, is there anything that you would like to add to this conversation? And also, where can people contact you?
I'd like to leave with this thought that, like I mentioned this a little earlier as well, the days of making money by hiding information is over. Today, we live in the cancel culture. You better understand for your own good that if you want to be rich, famous, and powerful, you better do something positive for the world. So that's the big shift that we have to understand. I'm not appealing to be a good person, have a good heart. No, none of that. Do this for self-interest. In terms of where to find me, I think I'm any your favorite social media, whichever one it is. I am most active on LinkedIn. You can reach me by email at any point of time. And as I said, in a month's time, we'll be releasing a very interesting documentary film, which is going to be eye-opening as well. So I'd love to stay
Rajiv,
connected.
I would like to say thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me, Juan Carlos. It's been a pleasure
Thank you
talking
so
to you.
much. I am Juan Carlos Giraldo from Boston, United States. Thank you so much, everyone.